it's Melanie. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing my August wrap-up, so stay tuned. Yes, you heard me right. This is my August wrap-up. I know it's very, very late, but I'm behind on all of my wrap-up videos and I'm working on trying to catch up on those. So, I guess let's just jump right into it and tell you my stats for August. So in August, I read 15 books, 2 of which were audiobooks and 1 was a graphic novel. I had 0 1 stars, 0 2 stars, 6 3 stars, 8 4 stars, and 1 5 star. I read a total of 5,477 pages. So the first book that I read in August was The Darkest Mind by Alexandra Bracken, and I gave this 4 stars. I actually read this right before the movie came out so I could go and see it that weekend, and I really enjoyed both the book and the movie. I thought they did a really good job of sticking to most of this story without changing it too drastically, and I really liked both. So in this story, all of the children have suffered from some kind of illness that have killed most of them. The ones that survive end up with special abilities. The world really doesn't know what to do with them, so they are sent to these things called rehabilitation camps, which are pretty much prison camps where the kids are tested on and treated terribly. After spending 6 years in one, Ruby finally manages to get out and joins a group of other kids that have also managed to escape their own camps. Everyone seems to have some kind of secret or agenda, and knowing who you can trust is really tricky. And I enjoyed it. I haven't read any more of the series yet, but I am looking forward to continuing. So the second book that I read in August was actually an audiobook, and that was Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire, and I gave this 4 stars as well. If you haven't read the first 2 books in the Wayward Children series, you may want to mute this for right now until I take this picture away, because I don't want to spoil anything for those books. But if you read the first book in the series, then you know Sumi was the first person to die. In Beneath the Sugar Sky, Rennie, Sumi's prophesized daughter, literally falls out of the sky and lands at Eleanor West School for Wayward Children in search of her mother. Rennie is starting to disappear because Sumi died before she had the chance to have her. So all of the kids go on this magical quest to try to save Rennie. In this book we get to see the Hall of the Dead, which is Nancy's world, and Confection, which is Sumi and Rennie's world. I really enjoyed this one, though not quite as much as Down Among the Sticks and Bones, because that one was my favorite out of the 3 so far. I can't wait to read what comes next in this series because they're just so good. Okay, the next book that I read in August was The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, or Beagle. And I watched this movie many, many times as a kid, and I had no idea that it was a book until, I forget, somebody else was talking about it, and I was like, I didn't know this was a book, so I had to immediately get it. I read it, I loved it, I gave it 4 stars. While I was reading this, the movie was constantly playing through my head, and they did such a good job with that movie now that I look back on it. But this is about the last unicorn in all the world learning that she is the last unicorn, and she sets out on a journey to find others like her. On her way, she makes some unexpected friends and learns things that no other unicorn has ever or will ever learn, and it's such a great story. Okay, the next book that I read was Kisses and Curses, 14 short stories by 15 different authors and I gave this 3 stars. And I think it was because most of the stories in here were insights into a certain aspect of another book or series, most of which I hadn't read. The first story in here was called Glitched, which was a Cinder story by Marissa Meyer, and I had read Cinder and I really enjoyed this story. And there were a couple other standalone stories in here that I also really enjoyed. But all the other stories that were parts of another like book or series, I couldn't really get into because it was like jumping into the middle of a book or something. And it didn't really work for me. However, I do plan on keeping this book, and hopefully one day I'll get through all of the books that are mentioned in here so that I can go back and read this again later and get all those little stories filled in, which I think will make this a whole lot better. For now though, this is 3 stars for me. Okay, the next book that I read was A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, and I gave this 3.75. I enjoyed the story. I really liked Watson, but I wasn't really the biggest fan of Charlotte. So there's this copycat killer at their boarding school that is copying from the old Sherlock Holmes books. Jamie Watson and Charlotte Holmes are the great grandchildren, I don't know how many greats there are, of the original Holmes and Watson. And they are the prime suspects in these killings. All of the evidence points to them, and it's really up to them to solve the mystery. Continuing with that series, next I read The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro. This was the second books in A Study in Charlotte, and I also gave this 3.75. I enjoyed it. It didn't really blow me away. I liked Charlotte a little bit more in this book than I did in the first one, but overall I still didn't really like her. But I did feel for her in this, though I still like Jamie Watson. I think he is so sweet and totally in love with Charlotte. I did enjoy the aspect of them traveling all over Europe trying to solve a case. That was pretty cool. So in this book, it starts out with Jamie and Charlotte are visiting each other's families in England, and it's all a bit awkward, but then Charlotte's uncle disappears and her mother is poisoned. So Charlotte and Jamie trek all over Europe to try to solve this case. And still continuing with that series, I listened to the audiobook of The Case for Jamie by Brittany Cavallaro, which is the 3rd book in that series and the last one that's available right now. So I actually gave this one 4 stars. I liked it even more than I did the first 2, and I think a big reason for that was because a lot of it focused on Jamie Watson, and I actually really like his character much more than I do Charlotte. And I do intend on reading the 4th book, which is called A Question of Holmes, whenever it does come out. So in this book, Jamie hasn't heard from Charlotte in like a year. Now the Moriartys have come after Jamie's family, and well, he has to figure out how to save them. And that's what that's about. Okay, next up I read the graphic novel Morning Glories Volume 1 by Spencer, Isma, and Esqueu. And, okay, I gave this 3 stars. Though looking back on it now, I probably should have given it 2 stars because, okay, so this is about a prep school where a lot of weird things are going on. But honestly, I can't really tell you what the weird things are. Not because I'd spoil anything, but because I simply didn't really know. I was pretty confused about what in the world was going on this whole time. I do know a lot of people got killed. Not a really good description, but that was pretty much what I got out of this book. Not a really good description of much of anything, and looking back on it, I I may actually go and change my rating for this because I just didn't get it. And I know in my initial review I said that maybe I would get it if I could find more of them used or discounted or something like that, and I'd continue reading the series so I could figure out what in the world's going on. But honestly, I don't think I will, just because it didn't grab enough of my interest to keep me wanting to read it, and I'm just not feeling it. Okay, next up I read Grump, The Fairly True Tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves by Liesl Shurtliff. And I gave this 4 stars. I read this with Sander. We both really enjoyed it. It's a cute retelling of Snow White, and it's told from Grump's perspective, and we kind of learn what Grump's part of everything is, and it was just really cute, and we really enjoyed it, and it was fun. So the next book that I read was Room by Emma Donoghue, and I gave this 4 stars. This book was so good, and I need to go and watch this movie because I haven't seen the movie yet, and I remember reading it thinking I need to watch this movie as soon as possible, and I've just gotten sidetracked and haven't gotten around to it, so I need to watch this movie still. So I was buddy reading this, and because I was buddy reading it, I read it a lot slower, but it was so hard to read this slowly because it's such a quick read, and it's just so good. And I told her if I hadn't been buddy reading it, I probably would have read this entire book in like one sitting. Also, I highly recommend the audiobook for this because I was listening to the audiobook while I was reading this, and the whole story is told from a 5-year-old boy named Jack's perspective. And in the audiobook, there was actually a child telling most of the story, though there was also a female for the adult parts. So Jack's mother was kidnapped and locked away in a room for many years, and she was subjected to rape and abuse, and during that time she gave birth to Jack. Jack spends the first 5 years of his life in Room thinking that he and his ma and old Nick are the only people in the world and that nothing exists outside of Room, and it really is just an unbelievable story. I highly recommend this book. Okay, the next book that I read was my 5-star of the month, and that was City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. This book was a beast, but oh, it was amazing. It gave me everything that I wanted. I don't even know what to say without spoiling anything. I loved how it wrapped up everything, because this is the final book in the Mortal Instruments series, and I love how it wrapped up everything and tied certain things together, but it still left things to build another series off of, and oh, I just loved it so much. He's my baby. Oh, this book gave me all the feels. So good. Okay, next up was This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, and I gave this 4 stars. I actually like this more than A Darker Shade of Magic, and it could be because this is YA, or it could be because I listened to the audiobook of A Darker Shade of Magic rather than physically reading it. I'm not sure which, but I do plan on reading our Dark Duet just as soon as I get a chance. So the town of Verity is split into 2. Kate wants to be as ruthless as her father, who has control over the monsters and over his half of the city. And August is a monster that wants nothing more than to just be a human. They really shouldn't be friends, but things cause them to work together, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, the next book that I read was Aroo and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. And I gave this 4.5. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I read it with Xander. He really enjoyed it. I think he gave it 5 stars. I'm not sure. This book is based on Indian mythology. And I think it's written in a way that really anybody could enjoy it. I also love the fact that it's a bunch of 12-year-old kids that are going to have to save the world. I think it also makes this book super easy for Xander to relate to because this is all done through the eyes of a 12-year-old and, well, Xander's 12. My son could actually see a lot of himself in Aroo. Aroo has a big imagination, which tends to get her in a lot of trouble by lying too much. When some kids at school discover her in yet another lie, they end up daring her to light this lamp. Now, Aroo knows better than to even touch this lamp, but she succumbs to the pressure. Of course, by doing so, she releases a great evil upon the world that will bring forth the end of time if she doesn't fix her mistake. Okay, the next book was The Art of Sinning by Sabrina Jeffries. And I gave this 3 stars. It was a fun story. Historical romance really isn't my genre, but I did enjoy the story. It had a couple of steamy moments, but not many. I couldn't help but laugh at some of the sayings that they had. Like, he would say, "Thunderation!" And she would say, "Heavenly day!" One thing that I can say is that it had an interesting twist in the end. And then the final book that I read for the month of August was The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. And I gave this 3.5. This was a really cute story. Molly has had 26 crushes, all of which result in nothing. But one day her sister meets her dream girl who just happens to be friends with this super cute boy that Molly instantly sees as crush material. The only issue she seems to have now is her geeky but cute coworker who also turns out to be pretty crush-worthy. Molly's only ever crushed on one guy at a time, and now she's totally confused because this time she wants something more than just a crush. I might have given this a higher rating if it hadn't been for all of the foul language. I don't mind cursing, but when it's like every other line, it just becomes annoying and really took away from the story for me. I think I would have given it a 4 if it weren't for that. Alright, so this is everything that I read in August. Well, plus 2 audiobooks. Have you read any of these? Did you like them? Did you not? Comment down below and let me know. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button down below. And until next time, remember to always be completely you.